Hey, Inspired Moneymaker. In this episode, we've got a growing pawn shop business, early retirement by age 27, and living a life of significance. Episode 260 features Aaron Walker, Christian, life and business coach.
Robin came in there and she woke me up and she looked at me and held my shoulders and she said, "This is not what I signed up for." And I'm like, I don't have anything to do. Like, I don't have any purpose. I don't have any reason to do anything. I'm sick of playing golf. I'm sick of fishing every day because it took the fun out of it, right? Because I could do it anytime. A lot of people are hearing me right now saying, man, I'd like to try that. And it's fun for a while, but we have to have a purpose. There has to be a reason for us to get up each and every day. So I said, what do you mean do? She said, I don't know, get a job, start another company, do whatever you want, but you cannot do this life of leisure every day. And you're gaining 50 pounds and you're wasting your life.
I'm Andy Wong, host of the Inspired Money podcast, where we share positive perspectives on money so we can make a bigger impact in our communities and the world. This episode of Inspired Money is brought to you by Yadi.com, the online source for authentic Jamaican products. Find unique holiday gifts like natural soaps, jerk seasoning, and guava-flavored pepper sauce. Or shop year-round like me. Yadi.com is my source for Blue Mountain coffee. That's what we drink here at the office. It's smooth, sweet, and smells amazing. Go to Yadi.com, that's YAAHDY.com, and make sure you use discount code MONEY for 10% off your entire order. Every purchase directly supports local Jamaican vendors, and your order will also support the Inspired Money podcast. Our guest is Aaron Walker. For over 45 years, he's been a small business owner, committed husband, devoted father, and community leader. Aaron has successfully built and sold a dozen businesses. As you're about to see, he has overcome catastrophic events, succeeded in the face of adversity, and held steadfast to his faith. He's the author of View from the Top, Living a Life of Significance. In this episode, you'll learn about getting any situation to a yes, money lessons learned from 27 years in pawn shopping. And make sure you stay tuned in to the end to hear about the benefits of building boundaries in your life and doing the right things. Now let's get inspired with Aaron Walker. Aaron, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Hey, Andy, thank you for having me today. Really appreciate this.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
You know, when I was a kid, I started working at 8 years old in a local convenience store, and I didn't know anything really about money at the time. I'm Christian by faith, and so my mom came to me one day. My parents were terrible with money. I grew up in a very poor environment, but my mom had strong faith, and she said, this is the only advice I'll probably ever give you financially. You need to give 10% of what you make to the local church. And if you'll do that, I think you'll have huge success over the course of your life. So that's my earliest memory. And to be honest with you, I've given at least 10% of my gross income since I was 8 years old. So I'll be 62 in March. And so that was my earliest childhood memory of money.
That is a very early, I think, very early of connecting money and faith. So I look forward to getting a little bit more into that. I know that your parents did well to shelter you from some of the family financial challenges, especially in the late 1960s. What of that do you remember?
Yeah, I don't remember anything really about money except bad things, quite honestly. My dad was a really hard worker. He did construction, and he was a very poor manager. And when I was 7 years old, we lost our house in bankruptcy. We lost all of our possessions. We literally walked out of the house with the clothes we were wearing, and we had nothing. I mean, we had no cars, no house, no clothes. Moved in with some family members. And quite honestly, if you'd like, later in the interview, we can get into this. I think it was a huge motivator to me not to go down that same path. I didn't know what was going on. I just understood that we had to move. And in later years, it was shared with me exactly what happened. But my dad had started drinking when I was a kid, and that doesn't bode well with taking care of your finances when it's your sole focus. And he pledged everything we had to a lending company to borrow some money, didn't repay it, and so they repossessed everything that we had. So my earliest memories were not good. They were unpleasant, to say the least. And again, I think it was one of the motivators for me to try to do well through the course of my career.
How do you think that shaped you? Were there things that you actually learned from going through that? Or was it all the inverse of what not to do?
I think it was the inverse at first. I think as I got older and got married early, I got married 2 weeks out of high school. So Robin and I started at a really early age. I wanted to then learn properly how to handle money. I didn't want to spend more than we make. Dave Ramsey's theory was popular before Dave Ramsey existed in my house, as we chose to live on less than we made. And we retired all debt really early, even in our business. And so, yeah, I wanted to learn to take care of it. I think that the catalyst was not having anything. And then as I've grown older and we've been able to accumulate a little bit, learning how to take care of it properly. But I do think it was the catalyst.
Aaron, the transformation that you had from the financial environment that you grew up in to where you are today is admirable, and it's very impressive. When you were a kid and had to move houses, you lost your home, you had this single-mindedness to get out of school as soon as you could because you were eager to work.
Yeah. You know, when I was 8, I worked at that little convenience store that was 2 blocks from my house after school. And then when I was 13 years old, my dad invited me to help him do a remodel project. And so I helped him do that during the summer because I wanted to make a little bit of money. I knew that a couple of years from then I was going to want to buy a car. And my parents told me if I was going to buy a car, you had to save your money. And so I started at 13 to save the money to buy the car. And that was a 90-day remodel project. And at the end of it, I went up to the owner. He was 23 years old, starting a retail outlet in Nashville. And I approached him and said, would you be interested in hiring me to help you here? He said, what would you do? And I said, I'll clean up, I'll sweep, I'll wipe these showcases off. I'll do whatever you want me to do. And he looked at me and he said, you're hired. And so I started at $1.70 an hour. I worked 2.5 hours every day after school and all day on Saturday. And I learned that if I was going to ever do anything in life, I was going to have to work for it because my parents weren't going to give me anything. And so I just started working. And when I was 15 years old, so 2 years passed by, I decided that the pawnshop business was what I was going to do for a living. And I didn't even know what it was when I was 13 years old. But when I was 15, I fell in love with the business. I loved being around the people. I loved all the diversity of the business and the items that they dealt with. So I went to summer school and night school for about 18 months. And I had enough credits to graduate the beginning of my junior year in high school. So I worked every day after that. Met a couple of guys that were buying diamonds and gold to hedge against inflation. They owned the 21st largest insurance agency in the country at the time. They lived here in Nashville. And I approached them one day and said, why don't we take your money and my experience and open our own pawn shop? And he laughed at me. He said, how old are you? And I said, I'm 18. And he said, we never had anybody 18 years old approach us about a partnership. And I said, well, hey, there's a first time for everything. And we talked, negotiated through it, came to terms. And when I was 19 years old, we opened our first pawn shop. I was a third owner. And I got married 2 weeks after Robin graduated from high school a year later. And that's when we started our first real business.
You've talked about the importance of getting over the fear of rejection. I know that you share that with a lot of people. Did you have to get over that, or did you not have that? Because you were bold at 13.
Yeah, no, I didn't have it. I watched my dad roof a house in the middle of the winter. There was snow all over the roof. And I watched my dad get up there and take a broom and sweep the snow off of the roof and tear off the roof and put a new roof on a house. And then I watched my mom put canned goods in a pantry, and she would nail a board over half of the pantry during the summer so we would have something to eat in the winter, because my dad's work was, not as good in the winter. Something in me happened, and I said, I don't want to work like that. I don't want to work that hard physically, and I don't want to have to nail a board over the canned goods in the pantry to have something to eat. And so, no disrespect to anyone, but it wasn't important to me what people thought. I was on a mission. I wanted to accomplish greater abilities in regards to financial strength. I knew there was better. I just didn't know exactly what that was, and I wasn't going to allow someone else's opinion of me dissuade me from accomplishing something that I knew I was capable of.
Well, it's a valuable lesson, because I just feel like so often, or too often, we kind of limit ourselves because of fear, because we don't want to be rejected. But the worst that can happen is that the person says no. And you kind of have a unique take on this too, because you firmly believe that a no is just for that moment. It's not for tomorrow or the day after or the future.
Right. That aligns with kind of our core values. And my third core value is everything is figure outable. And that's actually a word. But many times in business, I was faced with obstacles, and they would say no. And I would say, there's got to be a way we can figure this out. Kind of like Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, right? We can figure out a way. And if we just sit down and think through it, it may not look exactly like we had originally planned. But if we really want to accomplish something, I'll give you a quick little story. This is a good example. When I was 28 years old, there was a new location I was building, and I tore the building down, and I was building a new 5,000 square foot retail outlet. And I discovered halfway through the process that it wasn't large enough. The building wasn't large enough, nor was the parking adequate. And I called the owner of the building next door, and I said, hey, I've discovered I've got a problem. Our building is not large enough. Our parking is inadequate, and I want to buy your building. And they said, it's not for sale. And I said, would you meet with me? And they said, yeah, sure, we'll meet with you. So they drove out. It was the H.G. Hill Company here in Nashville, Tennessee. They were in the grocery business, but they were the largest property owners in Davison County, which is Nashville, Tennessee. And I met with him, and I said, here's my situation. I want to buy this property. And he said, well, we've never sold a piece of property. We buy property all the time. It's our biggest investment, but we've never sold a piece of property. I said, well, hey, it's a good time to start. And he said, we're not interested. He said, the capital gains would be inordinate, and we're not interested in selling the property. I said, listen, I got to have this property. I don't know what we're going to do, but I got to figure out a way to buy it. And he said, thank you, Mr. Walker, for calling me out, but it's not for sale. And he got in his car and just left. And so a couple of days later, I called him back, and I said, Mr. Caldwell, can we meet again? And he said, if it's about buying the property, no. And I said, well, would you just meet me on site? He met me on site, and I said, I'm really in a bad spot. You guys are very wealthy. You've got property all over the country, obviously, primarily here in Davison County, but I really need this building. And he said, it's not for sale. I'm sorry. End of the discussion. And he turned around and he started to walk away. And I said, is there not a way? Is there not something we can do? He said, there's nothing we can do. And he almost got to his car, and I said, I really need this building. He said, the only thing that we possibly could do is a 1031 exchange. And I said, now we're talking. I said, I knew there was a way. Well, Andy, I didn't even know what a 1031 exchange was at the time, but I told him, I said, hey, I'll do it. What is it? And he said, well, it's where you buy another piece of property of like kind. We do an exchange. You end up with this building. I end up with that building. There's no capital gains for us. I said, you go find the building, and I'll buy it. So he went and found the building, comparable value. I bought the building. We did a 1031 exchange. Prior to me even knowing what a 1031 exchange was, I ended up with the property, And I said, you know, if we can take that and turn it into a yes, we can take anything and turn it into a yes. And so I've lived my entire career that way. I've lived every business deal. I've owned 14 companies now over the 44 years that I've been in business. There's always obstacles. There's always challenges. There's always trials. But there is a way to work through it if you really are determined.
Well, I love the persistence and I love the creativity that ended up and resulted in a win-win. I want to get back to the pawn shop business because I imagine that as a 13-year-old to a 15-year-old, there's got to be a lot of money lessons in there. Our mutual friend Angel Jones once told me that if you talk to Aaron and you hold up an object, he has a pretty good idea of what that item's worth.
Well, I don't know if I'm that good, but you spend 27 years in any occupation, you're going to master a few of the things needed in order to be successful at that. But yeah, I did learn a few lessons about a lot of different things related to how to handle finances.
Yeah, what did the pawn shop business teach you about money? Did it give you positive lessons about money that you lacked growing up?
Yeah, no, there was a few things. So we could argue on this show whether pawn shops are good or bad. I can present a case both ways, right? A lot of people say, hey, it's taking advantage of the poor, and I can argument or combat that and say it provides a service for the poor, for people that are, you know, down and out. They can't go to the bank and borrow money, but they need to borrow $500 or $1,000. The rate that we charge is a lot, but there's a lot of risk associated with that as well. You know, if they don't come back and get it, we've got to sell it. If it doesn't belong to them, we're going to lose it. So the list goes on and on. But what I did learn through 27 years of that, and we own numbers of stores. I ended up selling to a Fortune 500 when I was 27 years old. They bought me out. I went back and bought the store I started with when I was 13. And then we grew it. There's all kind of stories laced in that. But what it did teach me is the vast majority of the people that live that lifestyle never break free. They never change the way they operate. They live from paycheck to paycheck. They do it each and every week. 85% of the people that pawn do it on a repeated basis. I will also say that 80% of the people that pawn come back and redeem their property. They know that if they lose that they're not going to have a safeguard. It's kind of their safety net. And so it did teach me that it is a way of thinking. It becomes kind of a lifestyle. And I think that we can break free from any lifestyle that we choose to break free from, whether it's finances or relationships or whether it's the way we eat, take care of ourselves, exercise. There are upper limit challenges. It's a mindset, and we can break free from that if we'd like.
How many stores did you build your business up to? And then talk about, because you mentioned the 5,000 square foot store. That must have been like your flagship store, complete
It actually turned into 10,000 square feet because we bought the store next door.
And that had a vault with a bookshelf wall hiding it?
I did. You know, it's funny that you bring that up. I hadn't even thought about that story. It's evidence that you read my book. I'd built a new store in Inglewood. That store that I'm referring to in the past story was in Madison, Tennessee, 10 miles north of Nashville. The vault you're referring to was in an office. I was 27 years old. I built a brand new 5,000 square foot store, and I thought I was something. You know, I was 27. I'd built this beautiful showroom. It had two-way mirrors all the way around. You could see from the stock room. I could sit in my office. My office had, you know, the full bathroom with a shower and the big sofa and see-through mirrors. And I had a wall that was at the end of my office, right at the end of my desk, that the bookshelf was on hinges. And you pull the bookshelf open just like you see in the movies. And there was a vault inside. No one knew it was there. And yeah, I don't know what that's relevant to this story, but yeah, it was kind of a neat thing. I'd seen it and I always wanted it. So, hey, I built it.
Well, I think that it just sounds cool. And it leads to my question, how is it that you sold the business? Because creating all of that with the two-way mirror or the one-way window where you could watch the showroom, you had this like secret vault. You were the big man on campus. This is your business.
Yeah, it's crazy. I look back now, I was pretty arrogant and prideful, Andy, at the time, just to be honest with you. You wouldn't have me as your guest. I could be pretty condescending, going from not making anything to being able to sell out to a Fortune 500. The Lord humbled me later, big time, but that's not what this is about today. But so I was sitting in my office after we had just built this new location. I just bought a new location on Knowlesville Road, right outside of Nashville. It's on the south side of Nashville. I bought a 17,000 square foot building on the corner of Joyner Avenue and Knowlesville Road in Nashville, and I had planned on moving that location into this new store, simultaneously building a new 5,000 foot store in East Nashville, which is east side of Nashville, about 6 miles. And one day get a phone call from a guy, and he said, hey, I'd like to come and see you. I represent a Fortune 500. We're in the same business, and I want to talk to you. So I said, okay, sure. I had no idea who he was or what he wanted, but he came in and he sat in that office we were talking about earlier with the bookshelf and the sofas and all that kind of stuff. And he introduced himself. His name was Sam Rizzo. He was with Cash America. And he said, we're going to locate to Nashville, Tennessee. And we've got, at this time, they had about 300 stores, and we want to locate here. And it kind of made me nervous. You know, I was 27 and I didn't know how to respond to that. He said, but we're really growing through acquisition. We'd really like to buy your stores rather than us opening and starting from scratch. And I said, I really don't want to sell. I had partners at the time, and I said, I'm sure they won't want to sell either. And he said, Mr. Walker, we have deep pockets, and we're going to be here, and we could hurt your business. We're going to be in this location geographically, and we could hurt your business, but you've built a really good store. And we had another store on Knowlesville Road and a couple of stores on Broadway, downtown Nashville. And he said, we really want to buy these stores. And so I said, no, they're not for sale. So he left. And so about, I don't know, I guess it was 30 days later, I get another call, same guy. And he said, I'd like to come back and see you. And I said, I'm really not interested. And he said, no, I'd really just one more pass. I'd like to talk to you. So he came, brought another gentleman with him. He sat on the couch, and this guy's name was Dan Feehan. Dan was the president of the company. And, he came, he said, Mr. Walker, we're going to be here. I said, yeah, no, I already know all that. And he said, we would like to buy you. And I said, I'm not for sale. I said, I'm 27 years old. What would I do? He said, we don't care what you do. He said, we want to buy your stores. And so I sat there for a minute, and I thought about it. And then he said, hypothetically, if you were going to sell, like what would be a number that you would be happy with? And I didn't really know what to say. I was just sitting there thinking, hey, I was broke, 9 years ago, and now I've got an opportunity to sell. And I can't disclose it because I had partners at the time, but I'll share this much with you. I just said, I threw a number out. I said, this is what I'll sell for. And he said, we'll take it. And I sit there and I didn't know what to say. And then I backed up. I kind of recanted a little bit. And I said, I just bought a new building out on Knowlesville Road. I just built this new store. It's a brand new building. Like we literally just moved into that like 6 months prior. And he said, you keep your buildings. I said, you're going to pay me and I'm going to keep the buildings? He said, yeah, we just want the business. So I said, I need 48 hours to pray about this, talk to my wife about it, and I'll get back to you. So they got up and left, and I called my banker. Johnny Claude owned the Bank of Goodlettsville at the time in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, where I banked. And Johnny Claude was kind of an advisor to me. And I said, hey, man, I need to see you. So he drove to my office and sat in there in that office, and I told him what transpired. And he said, Abram, you called me down here for this? And I looked at him and I said, I don't understand, Johnny Claude. He said, 9 years ago, you didn't have anything. You're 27 years old. He said, this will give you an opportunity to establish a baseline that could change your life. And he said, you got to sell. Turned around, walked out. So I went home, told Robin, and Robin goes, hey, I trust you. I've always trusted you. I'll go with your decision. And so I called them back, and I negotiated raises for everybody in our company, got them to assure me that they weren't going to lay anybody off, and they agreed to that. And they came in, and they said, we're going to have to inventory all the stores, and we're going to have to lock the stores with a chain lock. We'll each hold a key to each lock. Nobody can get in without the other person. We'll do the due diligence. We'll bring teams of people in, and we'll do an inventory of everything, and then we'll consummate the deal. So it took several days to go through that process. And at the end of it, they gave me a very huge compliment. They said, we've bought over 300 stores to date. Yours is the closest to inventory for the pawn and the merchandise as any store that we've ever bought. He said, we've never seen inventory as close as you've told us it was. Now, we had very good stores. They were very clean. They weren't your average pawn shop. We had multiple employees in every store. We had the nicest jewelry selection probably in the city. So that's why they wanted them. So I tell this story for this reason, Andy, not to boast, not to brag at all. Please don't anybody take it that way. It's not what I mean. But when you really, really work hard and you put everything you've got into it, we paid a 10-year loan off in 36 months because we delayed gratification. Robin and I took an $18,000 a year salary for 9 years in order to pay for these stores, to pay it off. And so I could have increased my lifestyle at any point. I could have had a much bigger house. I could have had much bigger cars. I could have had anything really that we wanted. But I wouldn't have built something that a Fortune 500 was willing to pay for if I had increased my lifestyle and not poured the money back into the business. And so I just want to encourage the people that are listening to me today that devise a better strategy for the longer term exit rather than increasing your lifestyle, leveraging beyond your capabilities, mortgaging everything to the hilt. You know, it makes a lot of sense on paper until something doesn't go right. And then fundamentally, it doesn't work out because the deck of cards come crashing down. And so we just elected to pour all the money back into the store to get it paid for. And then we were able to sell to a Fortune 500.
Very valuable advice. That long-term planning and view, sacrificing for the near-term gratification, but you got a much better result in the end. Now, Aaron, there's a FIRE movement today that stands for financial independence, retire early. Few people achieve it by age 27. And this sounds like a sweetheart deal where you got money for the business, but you still own the building. So you're still collecting some passive income because they're paying you as the renters.
I'm 62 now. I still own it.
That's perfection. What happened to your ego after you sold the business? Was your ego bigger now?
Yeah. We're going to really peel the onion back now, I can tell. So I'm 27. I wake up on a Monday morning and I didn't have anything to do. So let me paint the picture and be very honest with your audience. It was amazing. I don't want to take away from that. It was amazing to go from 18 years old, no money, living in a 500 square foot condo that we paid $19,000 for, to being able to retire at 27. I don't want anyone to miss that. That was amazing. But it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Let me explain why. I'm very driven, high D personality, type A, pedal to the metal, red line all the time. Got to get it done. Everything's figure outable. No excuses. Let's make it amazing, right? All those things. That was me. And then it was like you're going 100 and then somebody hits the parking brake. And I didn't know what to do with myself. And so we went to Florida. We were going to spend the summer, and it lasted 3 weeks. And I said, I got to get back. And so I came back, played golf every day. I fished every day. And then in about 18 months, I was getting in the bed, not laying on the bed. I was getting in the bed in the middle of the day. I gained 50 pounds. Robin came in there and she woke me up and she looked at me and held my shoulders and she said, "This is not what I signed up for." And I'm like, I don't have anything to do. Like, I don't have any purpose. I don't have any reason to do anything. I'm sick of playing golf. I'm sick of fishing every day because it took the fun out of it, right? Because I could do it anytime. A lot of people are hearing me right now say, "Man, I'd like to try that." And it's fun for a while, but we have to have a purpose. There has to be a reason for us to get up each and every day. So I said, "What do you mean do?" She said, "I don't know, get a job, start another company, do whatever you want, but you cannot do this life of leisure every day. And you're gaining 50 pounds and you're wasting your life." And so I went back to the pawn shop I started with when I was 13 and started working there one day a week just to let the guy that was a friend of mine off. So he was off. I ran the company. I started loaning them money because I had the resources to grow their business. Well, after about 24 months, I was in pretty deep loaning them money. And I went to him one day and said, "Why don't I just buy half the business? You work 3 days a week. I'll work 3 days a week and we'll grow this company." And he agreed to do that. So he worked 3 days. I worked the other 3 days. I own 50% of the company. We built a new building. We outgrew the present location. We grew it 4 times the size it was. And it was already, been in business for years, decades at that time. And then, I met Dave Ramsey. He was starting a radio show here in Nashville back in the early 90s. He approached me and wanted me to advertise with him. I did. Spent the next 21 years sponsoring his radio show. And his show single-handedly transformed that business from something that was much smaller to something that was much greater. There's so many stories, Andy, that we could tell, but you said what got my attention. What got my attention was in 2001, August 1st, I was headed to the office and I ran over and killed a pedestrian that was crossing the street. And it was the thing that humbled me. It was the thing that really showed me the brevity of life, how quickly things could change. That's a whole nother journey that at some point, if you'd like, we'll be happy to discuss. But it was the thing that really turned me around. It was the thing that really showed me that I'd had huge success, but no significance. And so I took the next 5 years off. I really kind of worked through that travesty. And God really showed me that you need to encourage other people, teach other people, help other people, look outward, be the giver, and not look inward and be the taker. Because if I had been killed that day and not the pedestrian, my legacy would have gone something like this. Poor kid from Nashville, Tennessee, makes enough money to retire at age 27, and nobody cares. And I was like, man, that is not what I want my legacy to be. I want Andy Wang's life to be better because we interacted. I want us to share resources and ideas, encouragement, and edify one another and take each other to the next level. That was my goal. That was my ambition. I wanted to have a level of significance because I hadn't had any up until that point. So when I say that I was a bit arrogant, condescending, cocky, prideful, ego, that was huge, it was because I put all my confidence and trust and faith into what I accomplished, not in the principles of helping other people. So today, our number one core value is relationships matter most. And that goes for business colleagues as well as my family. And that's what's primarily on our agenda today.
Aaron, tell us, what's the difference between seeking lifestyle and freedom and not more cash?
Yeah, well, I think the thing that we're all seeking is security. We want a measure of security, which the pandemic taught us there's not a such thing as absolute security because many people went out of business. They never saw that coming. They couldn't prepare for it. It devastated many, many people. I think the reason that I went in business for myself to begin with, and I don't say this to be derogatory towards anyone that works for somebody else, but I didn't want somebody else telling me every day what time I was going to show up and what time I was going to leave. So one of the primary reasons was to manage my own calendar. That was the thing that was really important to me. Even today, I'm not going to do this, but I could, when we get off this interview, I have other interviews scheduled. I could theoretically cancel those interviews and go hook my boat up and go to the lake. I wanted to be able to do that. Last November and December, I went to our team in October and I said, hey, I need a break. I need some time off, and I won't be here November and December. Like, I'm completely unplugging. And I went dark completely. I didn't even contact anyone for 2 months. So I'm grateful that I have the ability to do that, but that was one of the things, or one of the reasons, that I wanted a measure of financial success so that I would be able to do that and take my wife on a trip or two and take some time and read and study and pray and meditate and really figure out what I wanted the next part of our life to look like. And so for me, the money is just a tool, right? We work to accomplish and achieve the tangible possessions. And I think we look at money differently. We look at to amass this wealth, and I don't look at it that way. I look at it as it's a tool. It's an instrument to be able to help me live the life that I want to live. It's not about the money. It's what the money can do for others, what it can do for my family. It's the objective of what the money can do, not the acquiring of the money that I'm interested in.
Well, I'm sorry that you were involved in this auto accident that, resulted in a loss of a life, that put you in a 5-year tailspin, but it did give you clarity. Sometimes it takes an event to really hit you hard and make changes in your life. With that clarity, when you look back, do you feel like you weren't happy?
Yeah, no, at the time I felt that I was happy, but I had placed my confidence and trust in tangible possessions and titles. And when the tangible possessions and the titles go away, who are you? Who's left?
That's why you felt lost.
I felt lost completely because that's where I had placed my confidence and trust. Mike Michalowicz called me and he said he's going to write a new book. And he knew about the automobile accident that I had. He said, why do you think it is that it takes these devastations, these travesties in our life in order to reorient our focus? I said, I think we get so busy and caught up in the things that we think is going to make us happy when it's really, in fact, not the things that's going to make us happy. I hate it when people with money go, money's not important. It is important. It's very important. I just had it elevated to a place that it shouldn't have been. It was more of my focus than I should have given it time and effort and energy for. I should have, like, I came home with a pocket full of money to a house full of strangers in my 30s. And my wife said, I don't want to be a single mom. Like, thank you for providing, our beautiful home. We had a place on the beach and cars. But if I got to do this by myself, like, this is not very rewarding. And she said, I really need you to build some boundaries. I really need you to think through what it is that we're trying to accomplish, because we can start more businesses. A business don't have a memory, but we only get one go through with our children. We don't get a do-over with those children. We don't get a do-over with the spouse. It is today what we're making out of that relationship. And I had those reversed. I'm like, well, look what I'm providing. Look at our beautiful home. Look at the money we've got, the trips that we can take. And she said, well, that's all well and fine. And I'm grateful for that. But I had rather have you and you involved in our family and in our children's lives than I had the financial resources living this life alone. And so it really made me think, and thankfully, she heightened my awareness to that at an early age, where I was able to restore my relationship with her and with my children, so that I could be the dad I was called to be. Because, So many dads are coming home today, when the kids are already in bed, or they eat dinner and the kid wants to pitch baseball and the dad goes, I got to do this email. I've got to call this client. And the kid will only do that so long. And eventually they're going to understand that they're not priority, and they're going to seek relationships outside of the relationship with the parent. And sometimes that doesn't work out well. And then when you have time and you've made all the money and you've reached the pinnacle of success, you go to your kids and they're like, sorry, Dad, I don't have time. Like, I've already built these relationships. I'm already involved over here. So it's a very sad ending, because you die a rich, old, lonely guy, and you don't have the relationships that really matter the most. And so I would just implore everyone that's listening to this interview today to take note, to really sit up and prioritize your priorities. Really think about what it is that's important and why you're trying to accomplish those things. I get the privilege of coaching men all over the world, and we have Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind. We have 150 members in our mastermind groups. We have 15 mastermind groups today. And I hear these stories each and every day. Well, I'm just going to do it until this time, and I'm just going to do it for a period of time. And then they keep moving the bar, and then they over leverage, they overcommit. Now they've got the golden handcuffs, and they end up working themselves into an oblivion. They fall off into the abyss, and then their family doesn't know them like they really had originally planned. And they say, well, I'm doing it so that I can provide for my family and I can have more time for my family. I would suggest that you do it simultaneously. Don't offer your family on the sacrifice, the altar of more finances, when that's the very thing that you're trying to do, is spend more time. And you can say anything that you want, but your words are really futile to me. Your actions are screaming loudly what's important to you. And so just sit up and take note, really think through your family, and build some parameters, build some guardrails that say, I'm going to do this thing in this time frame, and we're going to do the best we can out of that. I think you'll be happier as a person. I know you'll have better relationships with your children, and I know you'll have a better relationship with your spouse.
Aaron, in working with 150 plus men, 15 different groups, 5 different countries, you see these patterns, and you've lived it yourself. What are some of the small things? How do you strike that balance? We always hear work-life balance.
Yeah, I don't believe in that at all, quite honestly. There's not a such thing as work-life balance. Really what we want to do is determine what it is that's important and be very out of balance in those areas. And so for me, my faith is first and most important in my life, then Robin, then my girls, then my grandchildren, then my business. And I develop the plan based on that relationship and the amount of time that I invest in each of those relationships. The irony of that, you'll probably make more. You're going to have less stress. You're going to be more committed to the family. You're going to pay attention to the things that you invest your time in. It's going to be easier to say no to things that don't matter, because we have to prioritize our priorities. To say work-life balance is equal on both sides, it can't be. It can't be equal. What you've got to do is invest your time in the things that matter to you. And these guys out there right now are saying all the time, oh, my family's most important. My family's most important. They get up before they get up, and they leave, and they get home usually right when they're going to bed, if not before. They never play ball. They don't take their kids to ballet and to the whatever thing at school that they're having. They don't help them with their homework. They can't make half their ball games, and they say their family's most important, and it's just not true. What's most important is that they succeed in this financial arena for whatever reason. You have to decide for yourself, whether it's ego or pride, because we have to have a measure of success. Don't hear me wrong. I don't want to deflate anybody. I want you to be very motivated. I want you to do those things with proper guardrails. That's the thing that you've got to do. You've got to establish the boundaries, because if you don't, the company you work for will, or the clients that you serve will. I've built very, very strong guardrails and boundaries, the things that I do, the way I live my life since my early 30s, since I've really understood that I could lose my family as a result of this, and then it was all for naught. And so you've just got to determine what's important and then build the boundaries around that.
So it's really focusing on identifying what your priorities are and then aligning your actions, because saying it is not good enough.
You can say whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's like I told my kids, Dad, I want to do this. I want to go see grandma, or I said, no, you don't. Because if you did, you go see grandma. Like, you want to go do this thing when you're a kid. Your boyfriend's more important, or this trip's more important. And people say, well, grandma's really important. No, grandma isn't important. If grandma was important, you would have gone and seen grandma. And so you fill in the blank, take grandma out. And people say all the time, my wife's most important. You spend 10 minutes a day with her. My kids are most important. You miss half their ball games. Oh, my kids are most important. He wants to pitch ball in the afternoons. I don't have time. I got to do another email. I got to get the sales report out. I got to get this contract proposal ready. It's just not true. Here's the thing, Andy, I'll end this particular area with this comment. In my early 30s, when it dawned on me what really was important, right? And right after that, I had the car wreck, and that really heightened my awareness to the brevity of life and how quickly things can change. I went to all of my employees. I've had hundreds of employees in all the different companies that I've owned. And I've always said this is one of my boundaries. If Robin, Brooke, or Holly, Robin is my wife, now be 43 years in June. Brooke and Holly, Brooke will be 40 in July. Holly will be 38 in June. I said, if any of the three of them call me, I'm available. You come and tell me, and I'll decide whether I take the call or not. So fast forward, I'm with a customer at one of our retail outlets, and one of my assistants walked up, handed me a Post-it note and said, call Brooke. And I said, what? The customer had left. I said, what do you mean call Brooke? Brooke called you earlier. And I said, why didn't you come get me? She said, well, you were with a customer. I said, let me go over my rules again. Robin, Brooke, or Holly, call me. I'm available. Like, I'm going to give you a mulligan this time. Don't let this happen again. And later in life, right, that was my position. Later in life, I asked my kids, I said, I know I failed you in so many areas. Did I do anything right? And both of my girls said, Dad, you were always available. It didn't matter what I was in. Even right now, Andy, this is kind of funny. We're recording this interview. If my wife were to call me, you'd have to wait a minute. We'd have to edit that out, right? Now, on the other hand, they know to not call me unless it's important, right? They know not to bother me because I'm doing interviews, I'm speaking, whatever it is I'm doing. They understand that. But if it's important, we have our own system. I have 2 phones. One, 3 people have the number 2. The other one, everybody has the number 2, because I want to be accessible to my family. You know why? Because they matter most. And the kids feel that. My wife feels that. My actions dictate that. Now, I have fallen and failed them in so many other areas early on, right? I'm not perfect at all. But I am fully aware of our actions speak loudly to what's important, not our words.
Here's my wake-up call, Aaron. Last night, my 10-year-old daughter, she told me, you know what's really good about the pandemic? One good thing is that you are around a lot more, that you are here for family dinner, that you're here when I'm home from school. And I think that I'm there and available and doing the right things. But the 10-year-old says otherwise. And she's telling me that, your actions are different today than it was 2.5 years ago.
You said something very important. There's a lot of data to support this, a lot of statistics, and we won't get off into them. But you do have a little girl. She's 10 years old. I read an interesting fact about a year ago that said that little girls that have premarital sex do so by the age of 16. And the only thing that they could find in common with girls that don't is that that family eats dinner every night together. See, they want to be heard, that they want to be listened to, they want to be cared for, and they feel like that's a way someone's showing them attention. And I thought it was a very interesting fact. You know, when my girls were at home and little, a lot of the things my wife did, I maybe didn't agree with, but one thing is every night we ate dinner together as a family for my children's whole life. And no electronics, no telephone, no iPad, no computer, nothing, ever. You know, the funny part about that is now my girls are married and I've got grandchildren that are 6 to 20 years old, and they do that with their families. They even light a little candle like my wife did. They do things like my wife did. They were taught that, see. But it's a lot easier to catch things than it is to teach things. And so those kids are learning through the way that we're living. Our example is teaching your little 10-year-old girl how she's going to live her life because you're the model. And so we've got to be careful that we pay them attention and we do the right things for them. So, man, if you're hearing this interview today, just take some of these things and do your own personal assessment. Just really think through, do I say these things and do my actions align? Have I built these boundaries? Is my family the most important? Am I doing something that I hate each and every day because I've over leveraged? There's ways to get through that. You can not over leverage, you know. So just make good decisions, practical decisions. Not every decision's a financial decision either. You can make a case for something on paper, and as long as everything is going well, that works out. But life doesn't happen that way. Life throws us curves and things don't work out as planned sometimes. So do the right thing that puts your family in a position to offer them the greatest amount of security and safety that you can as the provider of your family.
Well, Aaron, I know that you want to have a positive impact on everybody. With one data item, you may have ensured that I never miss a family dinner ever again.
Good. It'll pay huge dividends, Andy, I promise you.
Okay, I want to bring it back to this. I know that you were very close to your dad, and it's clear that your dad wasn't a businessman. But when he passed away, and at his memorial service, even though he never made more than $15,000 a year, you saw very clearly that he died a wealthy man.
Yeah, he did. You know, 2006 is when my dad passed away. He was 75 years old. He had cancer. And I was with him the last 2 weeks of his life in intensive care. I was able to be sitting by his bedside when he passed away with my 2 brothers and my sister and my mom. And I remember standing at his memorial service for 6.5 hours, 2 days in a row. And the line was through the lobby, out the front door, and around the building to the parking lot for 6.5 hours. And it took about 1.5 hours to 2 hours to make it through the line. And I remember every single person coming through the line saying, your dad was always an encourager. Your dad was always supporting. Your dad was always helping me do this. People from 10 years old to 75 years old with tears streaming down their face saying, your dad loved people. And my dad was a man of character. He was a man of integrity. He loved people. He had a good time in life. He loved to hunt. He loved to fish. He was a terrible business person. I'll give you that. But my dad was a great man that people loved. And it taught me a lot about the value of relationships. One of the main reasons that my number one core value today is relationships matter most. My dad felt that. My dad always knew that. And he loved people. So he taught me an invaluable lesson through his lifestyle.
Aaron, Big A, I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
Yeah, you know, I think everyone has to define success their own way. That's the reason I wrote the book, View from the Top, Living a Life of Success and Significance. I think you've got to determine in your life what is important. The very reason that I outlined the core values when I said if I'm living each and every day how to treat people, where relationships matter most, if I do make it amazing, the very best that I possibly can, if I never give excuses, which is one of the things in my life that I've tried not to do, if I really take the approach of everything is figure outable. If I think, how is it that I could accomplish this? And then my last core value, there's 5. The last one is truth before opinion. And for me as a believer, I use God's word as truth. That's the dividing line. That's the established stake in the ground for me, is those 66 books they call the Bible. I feel like I've lived a very successful life. I want to encourage those that are listening to this interview today that if you haven't established core values, do so immediately. It allows you to use those values as your filter as you make your daily decisions so that you too can live a life of success and significance.
Well, thank you, Aaron. Thanks for sharing your very authentic and genuine story with us. Many money lessons in there. Tell the inspired money makers where they can learn more about your Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind and View from the Top and all the things that you're doing.
Yeah, you know what came out of that originally is Dave Ramsey and Dan Miller encouraged me to coach. I started coaching, started doing podcast interviews to kind of share our story. So many entrepreneurs from around the world started calling me saying, I want to be involved in your program, that I couldn't coach them one-on-one. So I started a mastermind group, continue to do interviews. People continue to come. We continue to do interviews today. People continue to come. We've built really a brotherhood. We have people in 5 different countries now around the world, and we meet in groups of 10 virtually every single week. We meet twice a year in person, and we have started a movement of like-mindedness, what I'm talking about today, people really aspiring to accomplish success and significance in their life, and we help them accomplish all their dreams and goals. If that sounds like something of interest to you, reach out to me at viewfromthetop.com. There's an application there that doesn't commit you to anything other than a conversation with me to see how we can help take you to heights maybe that you've never been. So reach out to us at viewfromthetop.com.
I'll put that all in the show notes. Thanks so much, Aaron.
I enjoyed it, Andy. Thank you, buddy. We'll see you.
So what was your favorite inspired money moment? I just want to mention that Aaron's tragic car accident that killed a pedestrian was not his fault. Yet it derailed his life for 5 years. He has since challenged his Mastermind accountability group to make a commitment together. No texting and driving. I'm guilty of sometimes replying to a text when I should wait. Life is too precious. Will you join me? When driving, we put our phones in the center console. No texting, no distractions. Thank you. Picking a favorite inspired money moment was tough. I'm going with delaying gratification. I love how Aaron and his wife Robin reinvested profits into the business. Delaying gratification is what led to selling to a Fortune 500 company. Have a plan, spend within your means, the payoff will come later. If you had a different favorite inspired money moment, please post a comment or share it in the Inspired Moneymakers Facebook group at inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. Thank you for tuning in to the end. Be sure to subscribe to my email that goes out every 2 weeks. It's investment focused, and the Runnymede investment team highlights data, news, and events that we think are worth sharing. Subscribe by going to inspiredmoney.fm/newsletter. Thank you for joining me on this mission. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.